Greetings. I'm so happy that we are together today. We are working another psalm spell today, and today we are on Psalm 119, Zain. We work Zain to overcome self-destructive and negative thought patterns within ourselves. So any kind of self-destructive patterns is what we are addressing with this psalm. And the way we work these psalm spells is very simple. We read the psalm through all the way out loud once without stopping. We call this an incantation. And then we go back through the psalm and we go through it slowly, verse by verse, sometimes even line by line, and we dig and search for inner meanings within the psalm. And as we search those inner meanings and find those inner meanings and contemplate those inner meanings, the searching, finding, and contemplating is how we plant those as seeds into our deep mind. And those seeds are very real, and they are thought seeds, and they are magical seeds which are hidden within the Psalms. And when they are planted, they start to take root and grow and bear fruit after their own kind. And the more we do this, the better. So when you're working psalm magic, repetition is key. So work the psalm more than once. You can even work it more than once a day. And you want to keep working it until you start seeing some motion in the right direction toward whatever it is that you're working for. All right. So without further ado, Psalm 119, Zain. Remember the word unto thy servant, upon which thou hast caused me to hope. This is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word hath quickened me. The proud have had me greatly in derision, yet have I not declined from thy law. I remembered thy judgments of old, O Lord, and have comforted myself. Horror hath taken hold upon me because of the wicked that hath forsaken thy law. Thy statutes have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. I remembered thy name, O Lord, in the night, and have kept thy law. This I had because I kept thy precepts. All right, so here we go. We're going to mine these for the seeds of truth there and plant those seeds deep in our mind. This is the magical side of this operation. All right, so remember the word unto thy servant upon which thou hast caused me to hope. So we are addressing the Lord in the Psalms, and the Lord of the Psalms means the Godhead. This is pre-gender. This is not a separate deity. So it's not a father or mother. It's the source of all life. There's only one. So this one power, this one source, this one substance, there's nothing to oppose it. There's nothing to thwart it. And that is why this power is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing. So there's nothing it cannot do. That's what we want to align ourselves with, is that which cannot, that cannot be destroyed, that which cannot be opposed. So remember the word unto thy servant upon which thou hast caused me to hope. So the word of God is the will of God. So the word is the creative impulse. So the word of God, remember thy word upon thy servants. Remember your will for me, which has caused me to hope. So when we say hope in the Psalms, we have faith. It's not a hoping like, oh, I hope so. It means I have faith. I know so. I know that God's will for me is all I need. And that is the truth. God's will, not our own will, not our separate will. Our true will is God's will. This is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word hath quickened me. So what comforts us is the knowledge that God's will is supreme, and that there's nothing to oppose it. Therefore, our affliction is not anything other than a deviation from God's will, because it is not God's will that we be afflicted. So anything that is causing us grievance, that is causing us problems, that are causing us to appear to have affliction, is recognizing that there's a place where God's will is attempting to be thwarted. Now, you cannot thwart God's will. So if you're experiencing things that are not part of God's will, they aren't really happening in reality, in heaven, if you will. The reality is called heaven in the Psalms. They're only happening within the realm of the illusion, which is what the Psalms call vain imaginings. So just like a nightmare can seem really real. That's the nature of a nightmare. If it was just sort of real and you just we were having a nightmare and you were looking at it thinking, oh, that's just an interesting nightmare. No, a nightmare can't be a real nightmare unless you know that it's really happening in your dream. And the same thing goes for us. We know that it's really happening because it's so real. That's what these nightmares do. But they aren't real, okay? And that's good to know. So this is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word hath quickened me. So the will of God, if you let God's will be God's will, God will raise your vibrations and lift you out of the vain imaginings of this illusion. And that's exactly what's happening. The proud have had me greatly in derision, yet have I not declined from thy law. So the proud are those thought forms within you that think that they are separate from God. And the only way you can be proud is to either think you're better than other people or worse than other people. Either way, you are coming up with this idea that you're not as God created you. You are something else, that there's something wrong with you and that you need to fix it. And that's where all these problems start from. So the proud hath held me greatly in derision. That's what happens with those thought forms. Yet have I not declined from thy law. So you can think those things, but don't believe those things. When you notice yourself thinking either that you're better or worse than other people, instead of making a decision about that, instead turn your mind to the precepts of God, which means remember the qualities of God. God's qualities. We can think of, let's just come up with the top 7, okay? So think in terms of, just contemplate the idea of infinite life. Contemplate the idea of infinite intelligence. Contemplate the idea of infinite soul, meaning that you're an extension of God's soul, right? Think in terms of infinite spirit, that which cannot be destroyed, that which has no beginning, no middle, and no end, and is constantly creative. Think in terms of infinite life, that which is beating your heart and causing your breath to beat, to breathe right now. The thing that's giving you life in the moment. Think in terms of infinite principle. 1 + 1 = 2, no matter what anybody says. People can vote all day long, and they can say, from now on, 1 and 1 will equal 3. It won't make it true. Infinite principle. Think in terms of infinite love. Infinite love, that is the power out of which you are constantly destroyed. Infinite love. Okay? So that's what the not declining from the law of God is, meaning it means that you come back to thinking about those things rather than all of your arrogance, all of how you're not good enough or how you're better than. I remembered thy judgments of old, O Lord, and have comforted myself. Okay, so you can think back and remember all the times when things have worked out. You can think back and remember all the times when you have been relieved of any illness, when you've been healed of any illness, when any problem has been resolved. And this can give you comfort because you know that it is possible. Now, if that can happen without you even knowing what you're doing, imagine what's going to happen now that you know how to get back on the beam by using these kinds of operations such as soul magic. Imagine how much better it's going to be even now, right? So horror hath taken hold upon me because of the wicked that forsake thy law. Anytime you are feeling bad, horrified about anything in your life, it means that the wicked within you have forsaken the law. That means that you have allowed those thoughts within you to deviate from thinking about the principles of God and instead are coming up with their own vain imaginings. That's how horror starts. It starts by just contemplating these ideas that are separate, that are trying to be separate from the precepts of God. And contemplating those kinds of ideas create problems, create an entire experience of a world that is foreign to the truth. Thy statutes have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. So your songs are how you use your voice. Your voice, remember, the voice of God is God's will. Your voice is your will. So if you're singing songs of praise to God, that means that you're aligning your will with God. That's what that symbolizes. So thy statutes, thinking these terms, these qualities of God, are your song, have been your song in the house of my pilgrimage. The house of your pilgrimage. Think of the house meaning all of the different children thought forms from that you have. So a house is not only a dwelling, but it's a family. It is a legacy. So the legacy of all the thought forms that you have, they also those thought forms have children thought forms, and you have like a whole generation of thoughts within you. So those generations of thought forms, which are the pilgrimage to God, are what we talk about when we talk about in the Psalms, things like Jerusalem. It's the entirety of you that is trying your best to find the truth, that is trying to do well, that is trying to find the truth. All right. Then we have, I have remembered thy name, O Lord, in the night, and have kept thy law. So remembering the name of something in the Psalms is its nature. So again, remembering the nature of God is just remembering those qualities of God. We talked about a few of them, and you can come up with many, many more on your own. So remembering those things is remembering the name of God. So I have remembered thy name, O Lord, in the night. So when things were not clear to me, when I was the most afraid, when there was no light in sight. Okay, so you did that instead, and you kept thy law, even though your five senses said, you got to be scared, something bad's happening. You said, wait a minute, I'm going to turn to God instead. I'm going to put my mind on these precepts of God instead. This I had because I kept your precepts, right? So when you keep the precepts of God, that's how you're delivered from these vain imaginings, and including the manifestations thereof. So when you're using a psalm like this to overcome self-destructive tendencies, you are actually bringing up those tendencies, those thought forms, to the psalm to be healed, and you are bringing all of those things, and you are instead of thinking in terms of those self-destructive tendencies, you are replacing them with thinking about the qualities of God instead, and that is how this healing takes place. So keep coming back to this psalm again and again, and you'll start seeing those self-destructive tendencies melting away. All right, it's been so awesome working with you, and I hope to work with you again very, very soon. And until that time, blessed be.